y'all. This is Dr. Lala. Welcome back to another episode of the Revolve Podcast. This is the space where believers meet at the intersection of grief, loss, and transition to explore how faith and therapy help along the way, because grief and loss are a journey. It is not a final destination. So thank you for being here with us today. We're going to have a bit of a tender conversation because we're going to talk about something that we don't talk about too very often, because it's something that's subtle and silent. Most folks don't even realize that it's a wound that they carry. And so they carry it in silence because it's not about what happened, but what didn't. And so we're going to talk about the wound that comes from emotional absence. So this isn't about blame. We're not blaming anyone. This is all about understanding what emotional absence is, naming those gaps that we formed in childhood, and learning how to heal from them as adults. So this is all about learning. There's no blame here. This episode is about healing the wounds that were created. So let's talk about it, right? Because oftentimes when we start thinking about wounds from childhood, we think about wounds that were caused from chaos. There may have been conflict or cruelty. But this particular wound comes from absence, because oftentimes caregivers were able to provide what their child needed or what the child needed physically, but when it came to their emotions went unmet. A lot of times their feelings may have been minimized or even ignored. You know, how often do we hear littles get told, "You're a big boy, big boys don't cry. You're a big girl, big girls don't cry." You know, or something hurts their feelings and those feelings aren't acknowledged, or if they are acknowledged, they're told basically to get over it. And so children learn to silence themselves. They begin to self-soothe without support. And because nothing bad happened, people often don't recognize the absence of emotional support as a wound. But the truth is, the body remembers emotional absence just as deeply as it remembers the presence of emotional pain. So while you may not have inflicted physical harm, while there may have been no physical harm inflicted, the body still remembers that it was hurting. And that experience in childhood actually shapes the identity as we grow into adulthood. This isn't something that just happens in childhood and you forget it and you move on. Because even though you may consciously forget, your subconscious does not. And you react in that way. And so it shows up in different ways. As adults who've experienced emotional neglect, it may show up as having a hard time trusting support. It could show up as hyper independence. Many folks do everything by themselves. They're not willing to accept help because they don't trust that that person's actually going to show up for them in the way that they need for them to show up. It shows up in emotional numbness. Choosing emotionally unavailable partners. These folks who are there for them physically, and they may even be helping around the house or making sure that the bills and things like that are paid. And they may be doing those things, but this same person doesn't have the capacity to recognize when something is wrong. Or if you do happen to get into an emotional state, this person will actually remove themselves from the situation and go to the bedroom because they don't want to deal with it. It can show up as feeling like a burden. If you have feelings, you're concerned that that other person isn't going to want to be bothered, that you're too much. And something I've learned is that it's oftentimes not that you're too much. It's just that the person you're asking to help you carry the load doesn't have the capacity. It's not that you're too much. They just don't have the ability to help you with it. Right? Shutting down when you do have emotions. When you start to feel yourself get emotionally heightened, whether it's from sadness or anger, whatever that emotion is, rather than actually allowing yourself to feel how you're feeling, you just completely shut it off. And none of those things are healthy. They're not healthy for you emotionally and mentally. And those things actually aren't healthy for you physically either. You know, we've talked in other episodes how when you hold in your feelings, eventually your body will begin to express what you're feeling mentally and emotionally in physical symptoms, whether it's a heart attack, a stroke, high blood pressure. There's only so much that your body can take before it breaks down from the pressure. And so it's very important that we learn to recognize it and to call a thing and then get the help that we need, because healing is possible. And one of the first things we have to do is relearn emotional presence. And that means we have to learn how to reconnect with those emotions. Reconnecting with those emotions means that we have to learn how to slow down. We have to learn how to slow down and actually pay attention long enough to recognize when there's something internal going on. Many of us are so busy keeping our schedules busy that we don't have enough time and space to recognize when something is going on, right? Because you're going all the time. You don't have time to even pay any attention to what's going on the inside, because there's so much that has your attention on the outside. And you may be doing that without even realizing it. But it's true. And then when you slow down, you realize, well, I'm sad about that. That made me angry. I felt a way about that. Because now you don't have the outside distractions. And so there's nothing to keep you from paying attention to what's going on the inside. It's about relearning how to actually name your needs. Learning how to tell your significant other, I would like some attention. And doing it without shame. Not being embarrassed about telling someone that you're in covenant with or relationship with that you just need some time with them. And sometimes that doesn't look like we have to go out on a date or we have to be actively doing something. Sometimes that just looks like us sharing time and space together. One of the things that my husband and I and our daughter like to do is we'll each be in the living room doing our own things. I might be scrolling on the internet. Karis may be reading a book, and D'Angelo may be playing the game. But we're all in that space together, sharing that time and space. So we don't necessarily have to be doing anything, but we just want to be with each other. So that doesn't necessarily look like you all have to be engaged in the same activity, right? It looks like relearning how to be vulnerable, and that takes practice. And it's important that you learn to practice vulnerability in safe spaces. Be careful who you share the issues of your heart with. I know I shouldn't have to say it, but I will. Not everyone has your best interest at heart. So be careful who you share with so that you're not taken advantage of. Be careful who you share with so that this person isn't being a listening ear so that they can have something to talk about over dinner at brunch, right? So we have to be mindful. And then building emotional safety within ourselves. Because sometimes we don't even have the capacity to trust ourselves. Because as children, so much of what you learned about expressing your emotions taught you that expressing them and sometimes even just having them was wrong in some way. And so you have to relearn how to even build emotional safety within. And sometimes this process can be overwhelming. And it can be uncomfortable at first. But when you have emotional ability, it gives you so much freedom. Because when you relearn emotional presence, when you relearn how to be present in your emotions, you're able to feel without fear. You learn how to express them without feeling guilty about it. Because you're not wrong for having feelings. You're able to connect with folks without shutting down. You don't get overloaded. You're able to receive love without suspicion. Because you are worthy of love just because you exist. You're amazing. Why wouldn't someone love you? Why wouldn't someone want to spend their life with you? You are a daughter of the King. You are a son of the King. Why wouldn't someone want to share life with you? Why wouldn't someone want to share time and space with you? You're amazing. It allows you to build relationships rooted in emotional safety. You start from that foundation. So when we start talking about healing emotional neglect, it's not about becoming emotional. That's not what it's about. It's actually about becoming emotionally available to yourself, first and foremost. Giving yourself that gift of your emotions, of not holding it in, of allowing yourself to feel how you feel. Because there are so many emotions. Because the truth is, oftentimes when we encounter people who've endured emotional neglect, they don't just not express sadness, anger, disappointment. Many folks also don't have the ability to express joy or happiness, excitement either. So it's not that just what people consider the negative emotions that don't get expressed. Oftentimes, the good ones are in hiding too, right? But this too is a wound that can be healed. And our faith plays a powerful role in that. Because God, the Father, is present. He's emotionally present. He's emotionally attuned. and he is emotionally responsive. And our faith models emotional safety, right? Psalms 147:3 says, he heals the brokenhearted and binds up their wounds. It says that he heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their wounds. That's not just physical wounds, y'all. That also includes our emotional wounds. The Father cares about every part of us, our physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual. He cares about every part of us. So this includes our emotional wounds. The Father heals the brokenhearted and he binds up their emotional wounds, right? Because he is a God who listens, he comforts, he understands. And our Father holds space for the emotions that so many of us try to hide. He holds space for us. He wants us to come to him. Scripture tells us that he encourages all of us to come to him. Everyone who is weary and heavy laden, we can give our troubles to him because he cares for us. I didn't say it. The Bible says it. He cares for us, so we can give our burdens to him. And as always, therapy helps too, right? Because therapy provides what's missing. It helps to provide emotional attunement. It gives us language and a safe space. In therapy, we're able to learn emotional vocabulary. It helps us to build it, to be able to give a name to those feelings that we have. It allows us to do that. It provides emotional attunement, allows us to get in touch with them. It helps us to learn how to regulate our nervous systems. Because oftentimes when we are in this space, our nervous systems get overwhelmed. In therapy, we learn how to ground ourselves. In therapy, we learn how to settle ourselves. Therapy creates a safe space for us to be vulnerable, right? Because when you can tell anybody else the unadulterated truth about how you feel, about the things you've been through, the things you've survived, the things that almost took you out, you can talk to your therapist about it. And you can do it without shame. You don't have to be embarrassed. You don't have to censor yourself. You're able to tell them exactly how you feel and why you feel. And their job is purely to listen, to help you break it down, and to help you come up with a strategy and plan to be able to move forward. Because you can move forward. And it provides a space where you can feel welcomed. Your emotions are validated and explored. That's what therapy is about. In therapy, we learn that our emotions are not dangerous. Our emotions are not an inconvenience. Our emotions are not excessive. They're not something that have to be dealt with. Our emotions are actually information. Our emotions serve as a connection and a conduit for relationships. And that's all of our relationships. So often we focus on romantic relationships, but there are so many other relationships out there, platonic, familial, work, you know? All of these different types of relationships require us to have emotions and to be able to show up in them. And emotions are truth. They're our truth. And we're allowed to have that. You're not too much, right? And you are exactly where you need to be on this journey to reconnect with your emotions. And so as we close, I want to thank you for being here to have this conversation with me, for your willingness to explore a wound that we often don't speak on, that we can't see, but it can have a tremendous impact on our lives. Thank you for choosing to show yourself compassion, for being compassionate with yourself instead of criticizing. Because emotional presence is possible. Emotional safety is possible. And emotional connection is possible. And you are worthy of every bit of it. And so until next time, keep choosing healing. Keep choosing joy. I love y'all. Bye.